intestine and much in large intestine as well. Simple columnar epithelium. Now the stomach mucosa is thrown into folds. And you can see that very nicely on the models. When you look at the inside of the stomach, those models. What are those folds known as? Verrugae, okay? They're folds in the mucosa and submucosa. They're temporary folds. That is, they flatten out when food comes in the stomach and distends or stretches the walls. You can actually see them here, some verrugae. Okay, these large indentations are actually visible to the naked eye. But then there's some other features as well on the inside. You should be able to recognize those as well. So here again, you can see a couple of verrugae here and here. Then we've got these tubular indentations. What are they called? Gastric pits. All right? And they're continuous with even deeper indentations. What are these? Those are the gastric glands. It cells the gastric glands that produce what is collectively referred to as gastric juice, most of which is secreted into the lumen of the stomach, which is where the food will be. All right? So again, these are the gastric pits, these indentations. Continues with that, these much deeper gastric glands. It's hard to tell, there's a cavity in there, so they usually collapse these tissue sections. Okay? As I said, there are 4 cells you should be familiar with in the gastric glands. 3 of which I want you to be able to pick out on the slide. Or I'll pick them out and you identify them. All right? So let's say, for example, here again are your gastric pits. Like so. And then the gastric glands. If the pointer's up here and it's at the top of the gastric gland where it joins the gastric pit, what type of cell do you deal with there? Mucous neck cells. It's the top of the gland, the neck region, if you will, produces mucus, and this produces a protective mucus to coat the stomach lining, help protect it. Remember the stomach, you got hydrochloric acid there, you've got a protein digesting enzyme there as well. It's a very hostile environment. If you didn't protect the stomach lining, you'd simply digest away your stomach. All right, so there'd be mucous neck cells up here. Nothing distinctive about them, it's their position. They secrete a protective mucus to protect the stomach lining. But as we go down in the gastric gland, concentrated more toward the middle, we see another cell type. Hard to see here because I don't have the good contrast, but you can see it better in the microscope. They did have a pink kind of granular cytoplasm. Kind of get a hint of it here. These cells in here, it's hard to keep in focus, kind of pinkish, and the cytoplasm is kind of granular. You can see it better in the microscope. What kind of cells are these? These are parietal cells, and you should know what they produce. 2 major secretions. One is what? What's the one that works in the small intestine?
Hydrochloric.
What's it called?
Hydrochloric.
Intrinsic factor. And what's intrinsic factor do? Okay, it's used to absorb vitamin B12. Now why is that so important? What's vitamin B12 used for? Maturation of red blood cells. You don't have vitamin B12, you can end up with abnormal red blood cells. You go to a condition known as pernicious anemia. We talk about that in relation to the blood. Okay? Without intrinsic factor, you don't have enough vitamin B12 absorption, you don't produce normal red blood cells. That's why if you lose the stomach or part of it is removed, or stomach stapling or banding, these operations to lose weight can have some serious side effects. Okay, so parietal cells. Intrinsic factor, what else they produce? Hydrochloric acid. And there are 3 things you should know. Functions of hydrochloric acid. What are they? An obvious one is, of course, you're taking in all sorts of microorganisms in your food. You want to get rid of most of them. Hydrochloric acid will kill most of them in the stomach. So a lot of them never escape the stomach. So the small intestine is a much friendlier environment as far as the microbes are concerned. That's why you got a lot of bacteria in your GI tract, especially in the intestines, but few in the stomach. So it kills microorganisms. That's one important function. What else? In regard to proteins, what does it do? Well, think about a protein. What is a protein? Usually a big molecule made up of many amino acids. Is it just a chain of amino acids? No, it's a chain in a particular three-dimensional shape or configuration. Alpha helix, like a coiled spring, made a plated sheet, and then often in a tertiary structure, it's twisted around like a pretzel. And if it's got two or more polypeptide chains, quaternary structure. So imagine trying to break that molecule down when it's all twisted around itself, these amino acids. How do you get a protein digestion enzyme in there if you first don't unravel the molecule? That's exactly what the hydrochloric acid does. It denatures the protein. So then you get your protein digestion enzyme in there and break the peptide bonds that hold those amino acids together. Okay? So it facilitates protein digestion. What actually does the protein digestion chemically? What's the enzyme? Pepsin. Okay? And pepsin then is not released as pepsin, it's released in an active form called what?
Pepsinogen.
Pepsinogen. It's converted by the hydrochloric acid to pepsin, so it starts breaking down your protein. So protein digestion begins in the stomach. It's not completed there, but it starts there. Okay? What cells secrete the enzyme? That's the third type of cell. You simply concentrate more toward the base of the gland. That's kind of a more violet cytoplasm. What are those cells? What do they call it? Chief cells. Okay? If you want to be fancy, you can call them zymogenic cells. Okay? But it's a more violet type cytoplasm that's concentrated more toward the base. So these are chief, they're zymogenic cells. They produce primarily pepsinogen. It's converted by the hydrochloric acid to pepsin. So you digest your proteins in your stomach lumen instead of the proteins in your cells. Okay? As I've said before, you're going to see protein digesting enzymes released in an inactive state. They're activated to target area where the food is, in the lumen of the GI tract. You're going to see the same thing in the small intestine. Most of the enzymes that work in the small intestine come from the pancreas, but again, they're released in an inactive state, then activated in the lumen of the small intestine. Okay? Any questions on this? Fourth type of cell I don't expect you to pick up, and again, it's concentrated more toward the base. What is that type of cell? The fourth type. The enteroendocrine. And endocrine should tell you it produces what? Hormones. Remember when you're studying glands, most glands have a duct. Those are exocrine, but those that have no ducts and release into the body fluids, especially the blood, are endocrine. Okay? And their secretions are hormones. And the major one is what? Gastrin. Okay? There's some other things too, including another hormone, but gastrin is the important. What does gastrin do? It's two functions. Stimulates secretion of gastric juice, secretion of parietal and chief cells, or what else? Okay, it stimulates what we call gastric motility, which is the muscle activity of the muscle in the stomach wall, the muscularis externa. That causes the churning action, which breaks up the food into smaller pieces, and then moves the food from the stomach to the small intestine. Okay? Call that stomach motility. So gastrin stimulates release of gastric juice, and then also gastric motility. If you're asked, should you be asked? Should nerds know? Okay? So know these things and know their function. Okay? And in lecture, so you don't feel cheated, we're going to cover a lot more. Hormones and enzymes. Okay? But for lab, it's the ones we talk about here. So right now we've talked about one enzyme, actually two enzymes, one in the salivary gland secretions, which is amylase, often called salivary amylase because the pancreas also secretes amylase, and then pepsin in the stomach. We've talked about a hormone, gastrin. That's released in the blood, circulates back to the stomach, and stimulates the stomach. Okay? So this is the mucosa again. And we go deeper. And at the end here, we got a band of smooth muscle. And smooth muscle then, okay, what's that called? It's the outer boundary or extent of the mucosa. What's it called? Muscularis mucosae. To distinguish it from muscularis or muscularis externa, The thick bands of smooth muscle, more external in the wall of the organ. And down here, blood vessels, and so on, what's this? It's that region. Submucosa. Know these regions, okay? We went over that. The region of the GI tract wall. Now we're in the muscularis layer. And again, through most of the GI tract wall, you've got two bands of smooth muscle. And they run perpendicular to one another. The inner band, adjacent submucosa, is arranged how? Circular, runs around the circumference of the organ. So if I ask type of tissue, smooth muscle, arrangement, circular. Okay? The outer band has a different arrangement. We can see it here. Okay? As far as you come out of the plane of the screen, what's the arrangement of that? Longitudinal. It runs parallel to the longitudinal axis of the organ. So circular smooth muscle on the inside, longitudinal smooth muscle on the outside. Okay? Now, actually in the stomach, in the body, you've got a thin layer that's adjacent to the submucosa, and that runs obliquely, okay, diagonally. But we can't see it here because it's usually in the body. In our slide, you will notice they're labeled pyloric region. Okay, so when I ask me to show it to you, I can't. You can't only on the body. It's usually where you see it. So if I give you this slide, I'll usually say 2 layers. All right, it's 2 layers, inner circular, outer longitudinal. So be advised. Okay? And on the very outside, okay, this kind of dark line that you see here, what is that? Simple squamous with a loose connective tissue. What do you call that? Serosa. The serosa. And it's synonymous with the visceral peritoneum. Remember, you got a visceral layer covering the surface of the organ, a parietal layer of the peritoneum lining much the abdominal pelvic cavity wall. And again, this is the third serous member we've seen. Around the heart, the pericardia. Around the lungs, the pleural. And here, the peritoneum. Okay? The exceptions are the organs that are retroperitoneal, which means they're behind the peritoneum. Those organs are still covered with serosa. That serosa is no longer